Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon with our presentation, our webinar presentation on right-sizing your life. You know, Adam Mills here is joining me today, and we are going to be talking about how to right-size your real estate and your life. And he and I have had done quite a few webinars together, so today is no different. But what is different is we decided to do a little bit of a change up on the format, make it a little bit more of a podcast conversation. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about things outside of the box, rather than trying to go from a script. And hopefully, we won't bore everyone with a PowerPoint. I'm not sure many people are kind of tired and sick of being in webinars these days. Now we're just going to try to do like a podcast format today. So Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Daren. Yeah, I know it's great. And when you called the audible on this and said, you know what, let's flip to a podcast kind of format, I was excited. I mean, to me, it's a lot more exciting to do something like that. I find, same as you. I mean, seeing PowerPoint presentation after PowerPoint, where one person's just kind of talking at a screen. I find that gets long pretty quick. So I think, this idea of us having some banter back and forth, I think this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. And, before we get started, Adam, you've been on a couple webinars with me before, and we've done the whole PowerPoint thing. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like everyone to get to know you a little bit better. So I'd like to ask you a bit about yourself. Were you originally from Ottawa?
Yeah, born and raised in Ottawa. I know some people have these amazing stories they can tell about where they started and where they came from and everything. But no, I was, born and raised, started the Civic Hospital is where I was born, and then moved to into Centrepoint basically as a child, and then out to Manotick and kind of progressed from there.
Oh, nice. And you're in Manotick now, right? So you've kind of come home.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Came full circle. Yeah, it's Manotick's one of those sticky communities. I mean, if you end up living there for a stretch of time, people seem to always just kind of find their way back into that fly trap of Manotick again. So,
it's not the love though. There's the black dog and all kinds of, it's almost like it's like a little town in a big town, right? In its own little area.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, a lot of the restaurants and shops you walk into, and you always know it like a handful of people. And they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" And you have and these impromptu conversations. So it's fun. It takes a long time if you're going to go to the store to get one thing, because you meet somebody, you end up chatting, and then you're like, "Oh, damn! Like that 5-minute thing took me like 30 minutes."
An hour. You went out for milk like 2 hours ago, and you come home.
Yeah. Yeah, it's by the time you get home, you need to go back and get new milk because the first batch is spoiled basically.
So make it ice cream, anyways. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you. Being in Kempville, it's a similar experience. But I'm originally from Toronto, but I got to tell you, I probably would never trade it for the world, because it's such, you kind of feel like you're part of something when you're in a small community. So Manotick, Kempville, all around the Ottawa area, there's some great burbs in the area. So for sure.
100%.
And then you're married and you have a couple kids, I believe.
Yep, that's right. So I'm married. I have a son and a daughter. So they're 10 and 8, and they both have birthdays within a day of each other in September. So it's a very busy little pocket of time. Yeah. My wife's birthday is 2 days after the eldest's birthday. So all three of them are packed into.
And then and then they're all going to school. Days. And then they're all going to school at the same time. I can just see it going down, eh?
Yeah. September and December have very similar trends bank account wise for us. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. So got the kids going. And now let me ask you a question. Have you always wanted to be a realtor?
No, not at all. I went to university, did a BCom in marketing. Because truthfully, coming out of high school, I liked sciences and I liked math. In my head, I wanted to be a doctor, but I just didn't want to commit to that much more schooling. And I looked at the world and said, well, the whole world's a business. So if I get a business degree, it kind of opens the doors to whatever I want to go to next. So yeah, I did that degree. I worked in high tech for 5 years with a couple different companies in a marketing capacity, and then just got kind of tired of that process. It just felt like I was fitting into a very kind of niche spot, no matter which company I was in. And there's just different things I wanted to do. And you know, like in high school and in part of university, I did a lot of work in construction. So I liked homes. I understand how they're put together. So homes kind of drew me in, and I originally got into real estate thinking I would actually just flip houses for a living. And did one flip with a friend, and then from there got too busy with real estate sales to go back to that lifestyle flipping.
Yeah, and now you work with a team, right? You have like quite a few on your team, right?
Yeah, so I've grown the team since 2010 when I started. There's now 7 of us on the team. We're actively looking to hire a couple of more. So we're looking to grow it to in around 9 to 10 would be about the right size, I think, to do what we're kind of slotted to do right now, volume wise.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, we've always been a fairly lean and mean team in terms of just, very organized, systematic people that are good at just, working through processes and systems.
Well, I think what I like about your organization is that you all wear your own hats, right? And I know in my practice, like I'm fortunate because I have 4 people that support me here in my practice, but then the team has about 40 in our in our company. And the nice thing is that the support team allows the advisors like you are as an advisor to do their job the best that they can and not have to deal with the million other things that maybe aren't part of your bailiwick, like your specialty, right? So it really allows people like yourself, and I believe myself, to shine in what we do, and focus on what's the most important, which is taking care of the clients. So kudos to
100%.
Kudos to the way that you're running your practice. So a couple more quick questions, because I do want to bring a little bit of value outside of the box of right sizing, and something that's a little bit more current. Adam, what do you see as some of the big disruptors in the industry today in real estate?
So one of the big ones that's been in the media quite a bit is unreserved, which really it's kind of a way, I guess, sellers can do a for sale by owner. So, which has been around, since the beginning of real estate, people, buying a sign at the hardware store, sticking on the lawn and trying to sell their home. Similar in the sense that, they're really going about it for the most part on their own. There is, a back end company that is, trying to run these online auctions. But at the end of the day, this is a spin-off of a for sale by owner. And truthfully, I mean, those have been around forever. I mean, this is not new. Like, I started in 2010. There was for sale by owners. There used to be, Grapevine, Purple Bricks. There's been, Comfree. There's been lots of these names that have come and gone. And I think this is going to be similar. I think it's going to be something that's going to come and go. I think when our market is super, super hot and it's a strong seller's market, which we're actually moving out of now, I think a company like this is going to have a hard time, because they were really trying to just capitalize on one small piece of or style of our market in Ottawa, which historically, Ottawa's market is fairly flat. So I don't think it's going to be a long-lived business model, in my opinion.
Yeah, good. No, that's so true. I jokingly say sometimes to people when they ask me about advice and what we do, like what I do as an advisor, and I always say, I don't question my mechanic and how he puts on the brakes on my car. Like, let him do it. He's the specialist. But at the same time, when people want to do stuff themselves, I say, I don't want to take away your hobby. Like if you want to take your car apart and put your own brakes on the car, go for it. And the same thing with investing. I always say, like if you want to do the research and, dig into the PE ratios of companies and understanding that and why you should buy investments, hey, thumbs up to you, right? Like I'm more about the planning and the advice. So I don't want to take those things away, and I don't want to take away people's hobbies. So, but I don't see myself competing with that. And I'm sure you see the same for yourself in your industry, like you're advice driven.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's going to be, like you're saying, a subset of the population that isn't really looking for what we have to offer. And that's completely fine. I mean, I'm at a point in my business where I'm very comfortable saying, like, I wish you all the best, but we're not going to be a good fit for each other. And that's great. There's no problem. I mean, again, you can't put what's that expression? You can't put a round peg in a square hole. I mean, it's not going to work. Yeah. So why try and make everyone uncomfortable and upset about it? Just, allow people to do what it is they want to do.
Perfect. Yeah. Couldn't say it better. Last thing I want to ask about is now, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to keep asking everybody around me where they think the world's going. What do you what do you think is
Yeah.
coming for real estate in the next 12 months?
Generator sales. Generator sales are going to be going up. No, I'm kidding. Real estate for the next the next 12 months. I think what's going to happen in Ottawa is we're going to see things really start to flatline. It started to happen already. Ottawa's market. So if you look, and this is only a small data point, but if you look month over month, right now from basically April, Ottawa's market went up by 0.1%. So it did nothing. So it just went up as a flat line over the month previous. And that's very common of Ottawa's market. Ottawa's market will grow at times like we've seen, but when there's shocks to interest rates or there's, an oversupply in our marketplace, our market just goes completely flat. We're super fortunate to have strong high tech, have government in our city, of course, and then the universities as well. So we do have some very steady employment, which is amazing. And that's what I think really helps, keep Ottawa safer. When the world gets strange, Ottawa goes flat.
Couldn't agree with you more. I noticed that coming from Toronto. Toronto is just a bit of a roller coaster. And, I think it's because of our stable employment market here, because of multiple levels of government that kind of keep things kind of on the even kilter. So, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to, a little bit more of a normalization of the real estate market. I know the younger people are, so good. Okay, so let's get this party started. We're going to be talking about right-sizing your life. Adam, I'm going to click to the next slide, and then we're going to have a little bit of a conversation. Sure. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds great. Let's go.
All right. So I think everyone kind of knows a little bit about me, and now they know a little bit more about you. And you work with Royal LePage and the team Realty there. If you want to get in touch with Adam at the end of the episode, let me know. And if you don't have his, I know you're all over social media, so easy to find kind of guy.
Yeah, if you Google me or you look on social media, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, you'll no doubt stumble upon me somehow.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's talk about right sizing and downsizing. I like using the term right sizing myself because I find, downsizing kind of gives the impression that you're going from the Cadillac down to the Chevette. You know what I mean? And that's really not the case. You're just kind of reorganizing.
You feel like you've done something wrong. You're like, what have I done wrong in my life? Why am I downsizing?
Why am I downsizing?
You feel like you're losing, eh? Yeah.
So I like right sizing myself, right? And maybe you can explain when it comes to real estate, what it means in your industry.
So what it means for us so people say downsizing because typically you're trying to download or reduce debt levels if you have debt level on your property. And you're also trying to maybe shrink the space of what you're living in. Typically speaking, someone who's in this right sizing mode, if they had kids, their kids are long gone, so they don't need a 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom house anymore. So they're really just trying to shift gears into a spot that actually fits their needs, not their past family larger needs. Yeah. So for us, the downsize or right size is really just that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about why you'd bother.
So biggest thing there, that's a good one, and this is one that's probably near and dear to your heart, but financial freedom. So exactly, so you're taking money out of being trapped in equity in your home. And then, if you have someone like Daren, obviously you can take that money and have it work for you by plugging it into some form of an investment.
Yeah. The other thing I also noticed, with cash flow, and I always tell people is it's nice that your house appreciates in value, but if you've got equity that's locked up in there, that's only working as hard as the real estate's working, right? And if you can tap into that at a very low cost, where you get a line of credit at 2, 3, 4, 5, even 5%, and if you're investing in stocks that have historical returns at 8 to 10%, you've got a spread there where you're borrowing for much lower than what you're earning on the money that you borrowed against the property. So you're really doubling down on that asset and getting the most out of it that you possibly can.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Another thing there, so reduced consumption, so less space to fill. Again, like that example of the 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom house. If there's 2 people living in it, how many bathrooms, do you want to have the option of using, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then it speaks to the next point too, of just the upkeep. Cleaning 5 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms, if you're using 1 bedroom and 2 bathrooms, you're doing a lot of cleaning for very little purpose. And a lot of times, like I'm thinking of our place in Nantic, you know, once our kids are flying the nest and gone, I wouldn't want to upkeep this house nor the yard, because it's a lot of hours that get put into maintaining it.
Yeah.
So I'd want to simplify my life and live somewhere that certainly had a lot less, you know, maintenance time, and I could have a lot more enjoyment or fun time instead.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the other thing too is I always say, and I kind of jokingly say this to some retirees, that I say, when you right size your home and there's not as much room there, your kids can't come back, right?
Yeah,
So you kind of, you know,
exactly it.
you've got like a 2-bedroom condo or something like that, and then you turn one of the bedrooms into a den, right? Like there's really nowhere for them to
Yeah.
stay, so they have to stay on their own, right?
No, those condos usually have those like rental guest suites. You can say, "Oh, I'll book the guest suite for you if you want to stay for a night." So I mean, there's still options,
There
but
you go.
you're not maintaining the entire space yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and that's a really good point, because I mean, when you think about it, you know, like when you're talking about costs, you got some of these homes that are really big, like 3,000-4,000 square foot homes, and you got to heat that. You got to keep the hydro on, and it doesn't matter if you're not using everything in the house. There's still hydro running through it. Like there's stuff that's
Yeah,
being used, you know, and then in the wintertime, you got to heat pretty much the whole house, right? You could turn off some vents, but still you're going to get dinged for that stuff, right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, your overall just carrying cost to run that house is a lot more.
Yeah.
And then the last one there is a no-brainer. I mean, it's do what you love, free up your time. So instead of cutting the grass, you know, vacuuming the pool and doing that stuff once a week and it eating up, you know, a full day of your time. I mean, why not? You know, if you like golf, why not hit the golf course? Like
Yeah.
that sounds like a much more enjoyable thing to do to me than cutting the grass and cleaning a pool.
Well, I don't know about you, but you know, I've got an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old, and trying to get them to do the property maintenance is hard enough. And then when they do it, I always have to do it again. Right? So it's like,
Yeah,
anyway.
get all the spots they missed.
All right. So let's talk about the listing process. So let's start there. I'll
Perfect.
click
Yeah.
through
So I
and you
mean,
can
so for
talk
people
about
who
it.
are okay, yeah. So for people who are looking at doing the right sizing process, I mean, the first thing to do before you get too far down the rabbit hole is meet with a realtor. I mean, meetings. If you're talking to someone on our team, the meeting's free. It costs you nothing. What we'll do is we'll walk through your property. We'll have a look at it. We'll take a bunch of notes, and from there, be able to get back to you with a market analysis based on the current state of your home. And we can also give you a list of suggestions on what things you could consider doing in the property that would have the best ROI, so the best return on investment, if you're looking at doing any work. So that's a really important piece because you need to know what your home's worth. From there, the next one is yeah, sitting down with Daren. So meet your financial advisor. Say, okay, I have this asset, this home. It's, you know, my realtor tells me it's worth this. If I was looking at doing a right size, I could free up, you know, this amount of equity. Does this make sense? Do we have a plan? What can we do with this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, like,
I
if
mean,
you
and
have
that's got to be stuff. That's got to be a conversation you have a lot.
it does. And because I think a lot right now, many people are thinking about, okay, well, if I sold my house and I have a very small mortgage, well, I could probably, you know, right size to another property and be completely mortgage free, right? And now, you know, like you've got lots of options, you know, so absolutely, for sure. And then the market evaluation, that's an important thing, you know, because I think there's a little confusion out there about what people think their houses are worth, because I think the bank has a way of evaluating. Then there's MPAC, right, that evaluates your home.
Yeah.
And then there's a market evaluation, which is basically you would go out and find other comparables, correct? And what they sold for.
That's right. Yeah. So I'd look at what a comparable or a series of comparable homes to that one have sold for in the last, you know, 0 to maximum 6 months. I can go back further, but then you have to do a lot of time adjustments, and the data becomes a little bit skewed. And yeah, to your point, so banks do appraisals, and they look at the same information, but depending on you know, your credit score and you know, what you're trying to do, if you're trying to borrow more money from the bank, if they want to give you more money, typically speaking, you find that you get an appraisal that is more generous potentially than market value, because the bank knows you're good for it.
Right.
Right. So there's usually some motivation in behind the appraisal number you're going to get from a lender. Whereas if you get one from a realtor who does, you know, an accurate job of this, there's nothing in it for them to give you a high number or a low number. They're just trying to give you the best possible advice.
Right. Right. No, exactly. Now this is a big one right down here. The created decluttering plan.
Yeah, it's a huge one. So for people who have been in a home for, it could be, 10 years, 15, 20 years, it's amazing how much stuff people accumulate. And it's not any fault of their own. And a lot of times, a third of the stuff in their house is bins of things for their kids who have, left and gone to university and now are living in an apartment and just don't want all of their old stuff. So the decluttering plan is huge. So it's a matter of getting up when we hire a professional that comes in, she'll walk through the home with people and essentially let them know what items should really stay in the house from a staging perspective to showcase the home, and what stuff is no longer needed in the property only for the selling purpose.
Right.
And then from there, it's a matter of, figure out who in the family you want to give things to. Do you want to donate things? But we come up with a strategy on how to purge some of those items.
For sure. That's that's a big one because everything has a story in your house, right? Of how you acquired it. And I think, when I'm speaking to my clients about this, this is a very emotional time when they're thinking about, decluttering to sell the house, but now they're also thinking, should we be decluttering and selling or getting rid of this stuff that we really won't have the room for anymore? And now we're going to have to rent a space to keep all this stuff, right? So I think sometimes I'll have a conversation with clients about that and say, there's ways that, number one, there's people you can hire that you can work with to help you with decluttering and having conversation with you of doing that. But then the second thing is there's strategies around giving that stuff away so you don't feel like you're, losing out on your stuff,
Right.
having a new home, right? So maybe you give it to your children, your grandchildren, your uncle, like your friends, and when you give those things away, you tell them the story about how you acquired it. I think that and I think I've mentioned it to you before, is it helps people with the transition of letting it go, right?
100%. It's almost like you're passing the torch in a positive way and saying, like, let the history of this thing carry on, and it's going to carry on with somebody new. So yeah, it's not that you're burying these things and they're gone forever. It's exactly, you're passing it on to someone else and they're going to take it and run with it.
Yeah.
So the one there is staging. I talked a little bit about that, but the thing that is really hard to get into people's minds, and I walk into beautiful homes. The problem is buyers don't buy beautiful homes; they buy beautiful showrooms, right? So it's, you walk in, you picture the kitchen of your dreams. The kitchen of your dreams really has nothing on the countertops. There's no toaster, there's no coffee maker or Keurig, on the countertop. There isn't a couple of old cutting boards sitting on the counter. But none of those things exist in your dream kitchen, right? Your dream kitchen is clean, simple, basically got a couple of decorative pieces on it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So as much as you might have a beautiful kitchen at home, it's not ready to list and sell and get top dollar because it doesn't look like the showroom version of the kitchen that everyone aspires to have, which nobody actually has, but everyone wants it. That's what you have to create. Your whole home has to be that showroom, and that's where our stager comes into play.
I know when it came to staging, and it's funny because before COVID, and I jokingly say, like pretty much anyone could sell during COVID because it was like there was just, there's such high demand for it, and properties that weren't very attractive were still selling, But the interesting thing with staging, and I used a stager for my previous house before I bought the one I'm in now, and I got to tell you, it made a world of difference because the lighting was correct, the paint was correct, like it looked like a little Barbie home, when we were done.
Yeah.
And I jokingly said to my wife, I was like, maybe we should keep our house. It's like really nice. But
honestly, I would say more than 2/3 of our clients, once our stager goes through, we connect people with the appropriate, tradespeople. So painters, handymen. Like we have a whole stable of people that we send into properties all the time. And that's stuff that we help coordinate to, again, ease the process for sellers. But people always go, oh, wow, this house is beautiful. Like, are you sure we want to leave? They look at each other and like, I don't know. Should we stay? So I mean, it's a common thing. Yeah.
And it definitely makes a difference because you could tell, you spend a couple of bucks on fixing it up. And then when people see it, they're going to pay more, right? Especially in a balanced market, or like if the market's turn, you're going to want to get top dollar. And I think it's worth it. So that's great.
Yeah, and one thing that we and it depends. Like, this is, I'll give kind of like a general rule. I mean, it depends obviously on a case by case, but a general rule would be 1% of the house's value. That's usually a safe amount of money to re-inject into the property, to bring it up to speed so that it's at its best in terms of just doing the touch-up work.
Right.
That number doesn't account for if there's actual defects. So if you had water damage in your ceiling and you've ignored it for 10 years, well, the 1% math that we're using is to improve the property, not deal with defective
stuff. Yeah. Which now, so what's this next one here planned for when the market went on the market?
So we've had a lot of clients, especially those who are, it's an emotional process. They're right sizing. I find often enough times they have another property. Maybe they go to Florida, or they have a cottage they can go to, or they want to book a trip they've always wanted to go on. We tell them, you know what, get your house ready. It's going to be a semi-uncomfortable home to live in because it's a showroom, not a home. Book that trip that you've always wanted to go on and go enjoy yourself. All I need to be able to do is reach you by phone. And if you have internet, we can sell your home. You don't need to come back. So it just allows people. And then from the buyer's perspective, they can really book showings at any point in the day and not have it, be restricted by the seller's schedule.
Right.
So it's a much better process. It typically gets you on and off market a little bit faster. So it's a very streamlined way to do it.
Okay, that's good. I think I would personally like that myself because I know I've sold a couple homes and, it's like, hurry up, grab your stuff and go at the back door while the people are coming in through the front door, right? You're trying to, and that's 100%. Not a good way to live, right?
Well, every time, like, I know I keep going back to the kitchen example, but I mean, every time you wake up in the morning, you make a coffee and you make some toast, you now need to clean that and put all those things back under the cabinets again so you can't see them.
Yeah.
So it's highly frustrating. So, I mean, to not live there is great.
All right, let's talk about some mistakes that people make sometimes.
So some things that people don't remember is closing costs. And so if you're selling a property, you have your real estate fees and legal fees. And then if you're purchasing another one, which most people choose to not go homeless, then you're going to have your legal fees again. And one big one that a lot of people forget about would be your land transfer tax on the purchase. On the selling side, no land transfer tax, but when you're buying, you pay the land transfer tax. So that's something that's important to keep in your mind so that you can account for that line item.
Yeah. The other thing too, and something that I think some people forget about is when you're buying a new house. If you're buying a new house, there is GST, is there not?
So there is, however, if you are buying it as a primary residence, then what happens is your HST rebate gets assigned back to the builder, but the builder includes the HST in the purchase price.
Okay.
So effectively, I mean, long story short, effectively, you don't pay HST, you pay the sticker price as long as you're buying it as a primary residence.
Okay. Good to know. Tax. Okay. So what's next?
Another one there. So overestimating your current home's worth. And that's a key one. So, I mean, again, you hire the realtor to come in and do that market evaluation of your property. Something that's important to do when you're looking through, and a realtor should do a good job of showing you the comparables and explaining what each of those houses look like, the finishes they had, any upgrades they had. But then what you want to do is you want to look at them yourself and say, okay, if I was buying one of these houses that's comparable or my own that I live in now, what would I write a check for? How much would I pay? Right? It's great to say, oh, I want my house to be worth $2 million. Okay, great. But if you look at the comparables, would you write yourself a check for $2 million? Yes or no? So that's a good gut check for people to do. Put your buyer hat on and say, okay, exactly what am I going to pay for this? Yeah. And make sure when your realtor presents this information to you, you agree with it. You don't think that the realtor is just trying to impress you with a big number. Like, actually think about it and say, would I pay this?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Yep. And rushing a move.
And then rushing. I mean, some people get caught up about time of year and say, oh, I got to be on the market in 2 weeks because the tulips will be up, or there's something that's a driving thing in their minds about getting on market immediately. We tell people constantly, yes, it's good to set goals. We will build a timeline for you when we suggest you hit market, but we will always tell you to pump the brakes and make sure that your property is at 100% ready to hit market, not 95%, at 100% ready before you actually get on market. So
Right.
that means delaying from our timeline a week, 2 weeks, a month, no problem. We'll push it out because we want to make sure we put our best foot forward and give people the best first impression.
And a lot of these recommendations were things that you've been doing, recommending to people for years, right? But because of kind of like what's gone on for the last couple of years, I think people have forgotten the basics of selling a home, right? They just think we just gotta, there's all these pressures and people are just putting it on themselves. You got to do this and you got to do this. And they're almost out of breath trying to think how fast they have to move. And I'm like, whoa, take it easy.
Yeah.
Talk to the realtor, talk to me as your advisor, accountant, and your accountant, and let's walk through this, create a plan for this, right? So, yeah.
And I think with the way the market is right now and the way it's looking like it's shaping up to be, which is, fairly gonna be fairly flat. We're gonna move from that seller's market into more of a balanced market for sure. I mean, with that, the nice thing is you don't need to rush. Like, sure, there's going to be some moments of time or some months of the year that are not ideal to be on market, and that's fine. Your realtor can advise you on what months of the year to avoid. But really, you don't have a gun to your head anymore to get this done yesterday. Like, you can work through it at a steady pace.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go to the buying process now.
So on the buying side, so now, we've kind of talked about if we're selling a property for someone who's right sizing. And now the next conversation we have with them, obviously, before we list their home, is trying to figure out the buying side, right? So again, we're assuming right now that they don't want to be homeless. So that we would sit down with them and we'd go through a needs and wants analysis. So we have a pretty detailed checklist that we will, probe questions at both sides. And it's interesting. Usually both sides have very different answers, but we try and then find that middle ground where everyone agrees with the vision. And for us, it's really about, when we're probing it, yes, the bedrooms and the bathrooms and the garage spaces are important variables, and the price point's an important variable. But the biggest thing we like to get from people, and it usually happens over coffee, is where do you see yourself? What's your life going to look like?
Yeah.
Are you out walking a dog? Are you walking out your back door into a golf course? Are you locking the door because you want to travel 10 times a year? What's that life you want to create as your next phase? And from there, we can then advise people on, is what they're thinking from a bedroom, bathroom budget perspective feasible? Yes or no?
Right.
Can we tell them what parts of the city they could find these things? Right. So I think it's about diving a little deeper with people and getting that lifestyle piece figured out. And then that unlocks, some more guidance that we can provide them.
Yeah, that's really the deep dive. I call that the deep dive in my practice too, because like where you're going way below the surface on, where you're kind of like superimposing what you think the client wants. And then you start going into the deeper dive and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming anywhere, like,
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, because there's and I think sometimes we forget how many options there are for lifestyle, right? Because if you're in a condo living amongst a bunch of bakeries and cafes in a downtown core where you barely ever use a car, that's one thing. But then you get out to the golf course communities where, it's a different type of lifestyle where there people are riding the bikes and there's more exercise maybe in that community and there's clubs to be part of. That's another thing, so there's just really so many flavors of lifestyle living out there. I think it's important, like you said, to get into the deep dive and figure out what do you really want, and then, like you said, talking to your spouse or your partner to make sure that's what they want too, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of this going on every now and then, right?
Yeah. Well, because one person will be talking and all of a sudden the other person will look over and be like, what did he do? What did he just say to? Like, what? You want to do what? Like it's just, and then it's good though, because now it's a good active conversation, which needs to happen before you list a house and sell it, because everyone needs to know what the vision is and why are we doing this.
Yeah.
Right. Because that creates excitement as well. And then they're like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna roll up my sleeves. I'm gonna start packing. I start organizing. I start decluttering. You're doing it with purpose all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and like you said, like one of the things that kind of clicked for me is when you said, do you want to live in a place? Because if you're going to do a lot of traveling, you can't just lock the door and leave, because, a house that has lots of amenities on it, you can't just leave it alone. You got to, especially in the country, you got to check to see that the water is okay and that there's no flooding in the basement and stuff like that, so lots of things to think of, whereas a condo, you don't.
just picture like the storm we just had that rolled through here. That was, I mean, it wasn't a tornado. It was whatever, a series of little micro bursts of wind that knocked out power. That, you know, like all these things happen. You know, and if you lived in a home like you're saying that has a sump pump, or you know, or has a well, or whatever that might be. I mean, imagine what you'd be thinking about leaving that house versus if you had a condo.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you get a condo and you're gone. If you're gone for a couple of months, you'd say, "Oh, that's fine."
Exactly.
You know,
Maybe you didn't even have food in the fridge because you've already planned for that not to be there, right? So it's all good.
exactly.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be a big deal.
All right. So then you got budget. Did we talk
Yeah.
about
So
budget?
budget's a good one. Yeah, budget's one of those ones that fits into that kind of needs and wants piece when we're talking about, you know, the bedrooms and the bathrooms, and again the overall budget. And again, like the budget, I find for people who are looking at this right sizing, I find is often a scale. You know, it's not like a first time home buyer says I'm pre-approved for this, I can't go over that number. For someone who's right sizing, it's like, you know, I'd love to be here, but I can go as much as this. It depends on what lifestyle we're going to achieve.
Yeah.
Right. So again, that's why I find like the lifestyle piece is really the one that drives the process, typically speaking, more so than budget does.
Yeah. I also say to people who don't like the term budget, I find quite often they think it's restrictive. So I just say, you know, like, just let's talk about your lifestyle, the costs of your lifestyle, you know, and spend 15 minutes just putting down, this is what you're spending right now. But when you right size, you know, your costs might or probably will dramatically go down. So now, I don't know, maybe you spend a couple more weeks away on that vacation that you're taking, right? So, but yeah, budgeting is important because obviously I'd say it's kind of like throwing a dart in a dark room. If you can't see the target, how do you know where the money's going, right? So, yeah.
That's right.
And
then the legal consideration piece. Yeah. So that's just, I mean, whenever you're changing properties or changing, you know, stages in life, it makes a lot of sense to engage your lawyer and just update your will and your power of attorney documents, and just make sure those things are still on point with where you are in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, legal considerations are very important. I always say there's been some changes in some of the laws, because it used to be, you know, if you divorced, then your will was still valid. And then if you got married again, then your will was invalidated, right? Because of the new marriage. They just changed that in Ontario. So, and why am I bringing that up is because the law is constantly changing. And if you don't know what you don't know, you know, and you sell your house and there's ramifications legally about that on your estate, that could be a huge thing. Another thing is your primary residence. Maybe that condo you're moving into is only, you know, going to appreciate at a certain level, you know, for the next 5 to 10 years, possibly. If you talk to your realtor like you and say, you know, what do you think, Adam? Is this going to go up by 5 to 10%? You'd probably say no. But, you know, hey, your Florida property might, or your, your cottage might. And why is that important? Because you can have any of those properties can be your primary residence and be non-taxable on your estate, right? Because like non-taxable if you sell it, right? So understanding which one you designate as your primary residence is very important, right? So people just need to know that and take that into account when they do their wills and their power of attorney.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, let's see here. I'm going to go to the next slide. Look at that. We're at the end, and that wasn't too painful.
No, that was good. I mean, it was fun doing it this way too, with a little bit of back and forth banter. So
Yeah.
no, that was great.
Okay, well, listen, I'm gonna wrap it up there, and you know, obviously, people can get in touch with you if they're looking to right size their lives. And you know what? If you're not just for and when I say right sizing, it's not just the downsizing type of thing. I mean, you and I were joking earlier today that like we're both upsizing a little bit right now, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you also help the people who are upsizing their life. Maybe they got a couple kids on the way and they want to get a bigger home, right?
That's right. Yeah, we work with definitely the whole gamut of people. I mean, from first-time home buyers to those who are doing the right sizing and everything in between that as well.
Okay, good for you. Good for you, Adam. Well, listen, thanks for being on the webinar today. If you have any questions for Adam, I encourage everyone reach out to see him online through LinkedIn, Facebook. And if you can't find him, send me an email. I'll get you in touch with him. and we'll make sure you get the right advice. So till next time,
Excellent.
see everybody soon.
Thanks so much, Dan. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Adam. Take care.